Peterborough Police Service.
Hey, my name is Logan, and I would like to seek / make an appointment to have a personal conversation with the Peterborough Police Chief John Lyons, or the inspector.
Okay, I'll put you through to his extension. He would have to speak to him directly, okay?
Thank you.
One moment.
Inspector Lyons can help you.
Hey, Inspector Lyons. My name is Logan. I'm a Peterborough resident, and I'm one of the peaceful protesters who shows up on Saturday, 12 o'clock at City Hall. And the cops have come and broken up our peaceful protests twice now in a row. And when I mentioned to them, I was a soldier with the Hasty Peas for 6 years, so I'm not totally ignorant to the idea of walking up to a superior and saying, "Excuse me, I feel that there is something unlawful happening here, and you can reject an unlawful order," correct?
You can reject it, but
it's possible in the police force to reject an unlawful order from a superior, correct?
That is incorrect. It's called insubordination.
I'm saying an unlawful order, not.
Okay, sorry, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I talk to your men, now most of every protester there is extremely adamant that breaking up peaceful protests is basically one of the final line between, a tyrannical government, and demonstrating that they're willing to shut down, the most fundamental final check and balance, for a free society, which is being able to go outside and protest. It's all over the charter. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's almost like rule 1 and 2 as a final check and balance. Would you be willing to at least do an audit or some sort of check to make sure that you are not infringing on the most fundamental rights of Peterborough residents and Canadians in general for the right to protest outside, and especially peacefully, because we are peaceful?
It's already been done.
So you are.
So you understand that we're in a pandemic, right? Do you understand that?
Oh.
Do you understand that the government has legislated a stay-at-home order? Do you understand that?
Yeah, but
So no buts. Do you understand that? Do you understand that there is a stay-at-home order that the government has put into place that's enforceable? Do you understand that?
Well, I actually don't stand.
Then I'll explain it to you. So we're in a pandemic. There's a virus going around called coronavirus, which is deadly. It is spreading in communities because of social activity. So the government in this latest lockdown measure, who are trying to save lives, initiated a stay-at-home order, which means unless you're out for particular reasons, you are in violation of the legislation. Okay? It's called the Emergency Measures and Civil Protection Act. So we're in unprecedented times. We have this EMCPA has been enacted, okay? Which means unfortunately it gives the police more authority to try and enforce those orders. So you have to identify yourself. And that's all part of the provisions of the legislation. And the Reopening Ontario Act, which is another separate legislation but works in unison with, is what provides the police with the ability to enforce that legislation. You don't have to like it. I've already consulted the legal with the city over the constitutionality of gatherings, and if you are not out for the reasons specified under the EMCPA, and the stay-at-home order, you are in violation of the legislation, and therefore you will be ticketed.
So this is regardless of the fact that it's been 1 year and there is a massive...
You don't have to like it, and you can argue till you're blue in the face with me. You're not going to get anywhere with it. It's still in effect. I'm not going to argue with the science. I'm not going to argue with the legislation. The legislation is the legislation.
So this is a one-way conversation then, Inspector?
We have done this. You know what? We've been educating people for a year. Our volume of warnings versus the issuance of provincial offense notices is unbelievably distant. We have done way more educating than we have enforcing, because we're obviously, it's not one way, and I don't like you putting those words in my mouth.
You're cutting me off and stuff, so
No, because I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, it's not fair, and it's been over a year, and, well, yeah, so what? It's still in effect. The legislation is still in effect.
That's not what I was going to say, though.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to point out the fact
Okay.
that over the course of 1 year, there has been a massive amount of evidence showing that this is, at the very minimum, not what they say it is. Now, you obviously don't agree with this, but through my extensive research, I could not prove, but show that there's at least an obvious fraud element based in this whole narrative. And you don't have to agree with that. And I know you guys, you follow the rules, and I'm sure you've had lots of talks with the 3-person council. But
Three-person council?
if
What do you mean the 3-person council?
the security council with you and the mayor and then the medical officer? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm involved in that. That's I'm part of the emergency control group.
Yeah. So
it meets every Wednesday. Yeah.
So if the average man or woman can acquire the info to at least put in extreme credible doubt of this narrative and this storyline.
So what is the doubt? Can you tell me what the doubt is then, please? Because I see the numbers every day. I get them reported directly to me of how many people have the virus and how many people are dying. So you tell me what the doubt is. Because I'd love you to tell it to the families of those that have passed because of coronavirus. I'd love for you to tell them your doubt.
Yes, sir. So I've seen online there is a man who has been doing freedom of information requests with the Canadian government, and he has contacted over 17 institutions, including universities, requesting the evidence that any paper or email or piece of information has ever gone through their hands stating that there's a quantified isolated virus. And every single institution has responded that there is no quantified isolated virus available. So they have never even seen the quantified isolated virus. As well as
So sorry, are you saying it's a hoax?
I'm saying there's a massive fraud element. I don't know how far it goes, sir.
Okay, well, that's your opinion. And really, honestly, this is what you said to me, that it's a one-way conversation. I'm sorry, I don't even know how to respond to that.
Because you were cutting me off, sir.
I don't even know how to respond to that. I honestly don't even know how to respond to that. I am absolutely gobsmacked. I don't know what to say to that.
Well,
I really don't.
If you'd like, sir, because you seem not willing to budge on anything, I will put together.
You don't understand that.
Sir. I will put together a compilation of my findings, and I will serve it to your office only for your review. You don't have to agree with it. I'm sure you guys look over lots and lots of information where you throw out the non-credible, non-relevant information, and this event has created an information overload storm. Now, I consider myself somebody who can pick apart the very key details that create a foundation for a narrative and a storyline. And under my investigation, I have found that there is at least a massive fraud element to this. And if you guys are unwilling to even investigate from your own community the information they have found on their own time through their own righteous moral leanings to figure out the truth, then this is a one-way conversation. because
So you're saying to me that I should disregard the legislation?
Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
Is that what you're saying? I should disregard the legislation? I should just tell our officers, oh, it's all a hoax. It isn't true. There's an opinion out there that this is all. There's nothing to support this, and yet we have people contracting a virus and dying. So is this what I'm supposed to tell people? I'm trying to make this clear in my head.
I'm only addressing the issue of the final check and balance of being able to protest outside as an element.
And that goes against legislation. Correct. We've gone over this. We've beaten that one down. I'm not going further with that. There is legislation that says you can only gather for certain things, and they're very, very clearly spelled out. It's not a secret. It's out there everywhere. But what you can and cannot do under the stay-at-home order, you don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. But it's like people that get stopped for speeding. They don't agree with it. They don't think they should be stopped for speeding. Well, there's a limit to what you can drive. And this roadside argument happens almost every single time a police officer stops somebody for speeding. They get this same rebuttal. And this is what's happening here. Is people don't like the rules, they don't like the laws, they don't like the legislation. And you do have the right to protest it, but it is going to be enforced. Okay. Like, that's my point. And you know where the place to argue this is in court. Right? You have that opportunity. If you don't agree with the fines that have been levied, you have that's the beauty of this country and the democracy we live in. You can go into a courthouse and you can argue for your points. And that's where this argument needs to go, is in the courts. And that's what I'm trying to say is that you have the right to express your side of the story. You have your right to explain why it is that you don't seem to think that the legislation applies to you. And that's the place to do it. If you've received a ticket under the ROA or the EMCPA for the $880 fine, that there's an option in there, it's option 3, that you can go to court and you can argue your point in front of a justice of the peace.
Okay, Inspector. So
does that not make sense that you have the podium?
I agree that the court is a great place to bring it up. I disagree with the idea that we can't even go. There's a fear element with going outside and protesting for our right to bring up the fact that these fines shouldn't even be applying, at least to us peaceful protesters, because if you can't protest outside and you have to wait for a court date, that means freedom is on the police's side and their time and the courts' time. And as far as I'm aware, the courts are so extremely backed up. That means I might not even get a court case. So if I can't get a court case because the fines and the courts are overloaded and I can't protest outside, that relegates me to inside. And I think if I can't, because other people probably want to protest. We get a lot of positive honks, and I bet most of those people aren't coming to join us in protest because there is a $900 fine, $880, and that's more of a fear extortive practice where you can get hit. And you can have your financials and your security attacked for speaking your mind outside. And that is the part I disagree with entirely.
So do you know that in regular, normal times, when we don't have a Emergency Measures Act in place, do you know that we support protest? Did you know that? That we actually open?
I made a video about this yesterday. I saw that you had a statement of solidarity with Black Lives Matter, and you put out a statement that this is the Peterborough Police, and it's not you. It was the past inspector. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he wrote the statement of solidarity, and he said that the Peterborough Police was committed to fighting for the right to protest and gather.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and that's my point. But this is different times. We are now under a stay-at-home order as part of the EMCPA. It is different. It is not the same. Any protest that we've had in the past, anyone that wants to wave a banner or a flag or even block traffic, we've even gone as far as allowing that Whereas we could have easily stopped that from happening and said, okay, you've gone too far. We've actually we've protected people so they can have that right to protest. In the downtown, on Water Street, they've walked up against traffic, they've blocked traffic. We have sent officers to the intersections to make sure that they can get through safely. And we've not once said to them, hey, get off the road, or, so we do support protest in normal times. We are not in normal times. And whether you agree with that or not, I'm sorry. That's not an argument I'm going to have, because I see as much as you say you have evidence to the contrary, I've seen a lot of evidence to support. And I do know that there is a thing called coronavirus, COVID-19, that is affecting the world. There are hundreds of thousands, if not hundreds of millions of people that have contracted this virus, and a ton of people have died. Now, is it the biggest and the baddest? I'm not saying that. I'm not using fear-mongering to say, oh my gosh, you need to, lock yourself in a closet for the next 6 years. The legislation allows people to go out and do their exercise, to get their meals, to attend appointments. So it's not like there's a police state where it's like everything's locked down, the police are stopping you and asking you what you're doing. We're not doing that. We are not allowed to do that. We see a car with 6 people in it. We can't stop it and say, hey, what are you doing? We can't do that, nor are we. That is not happening. But there is a thing where if people are out and under normal times, that protest is lawful, fill your boots. And I think that we have the right to protest. I think that that's the beauty of living in this country, in normal times. And we're not there. And until we get there, unfortunately, and if you think that we enjoy having to enforce this legislation, you're entirely wrong.
Oh, I've heard it from your officers, and I've heard it through the grapevine that they do not want to enforce this stuff.
Well, nobody wants to do things like this because it eats at the core of what you're speaking to. But we're in different times. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but that's what we're in. And that's what that's what the officers are facing too. They know that this is not normal times, and they know that they have to do things that are legislated. And yes, it is the government that legislates it. But at the end of the day, we are the barons. We're the ones that are given the banner to go and deal with that. And we have to do it. It falls back on us every single time. If we're going and not doing anything about it, and believe me, you have no idea, as much as you say the amount of support you got the first Saturday, I guarantee you there was much, or not more people that were appalled. And believe me, I've got the emails, and I've got the phone calls of people saying this is outlandish, this is unbelievable. Do people not understand that there is a stay-at-home order? So I'm not disagreeing that you have support, but I'm also saying that not everybody supports you. And there are a ton of people who do not support the protest. So, again, I'm trying to be fair. I'm just trying to tell you that I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with what you're saying. But under normal circumstances, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Yes.
We would. Because if you called me and said, hey, we're going to protest at City Hall on Saturday, I'd say, can you just do me a favor and make sure everybody's safe? Could you make sure you're not in the roadway where you can get hit by a car? Could you make sure that, you keep it relatively vulgar free for the kids that may be viewing it? Mm-hmm. But even at that, have you been by the hospital on a Saturday or Sunday?
Excuse, have I been by there?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Okay, so they have, again, under normal times, they have protests every weekend for the abortions.
Right.
And they have pictures of fetuses.
Oh, yeah.
We allow that. That's society. We support it. We say you have the right to protest. And we get continual complaints about how disgusting it is and how over the line it is. But again, under normal circumstances, that's what you have the right to do.
So but standing outside now, it's just not. It's not one of the things that it was deemed essential protest.
Correct. That's as simple as it is. It's nothing more nefarious than that. It is. There are certain things that you can leave home for.
And
you can leave home for extras.
Do you agree with the sentiment that peaceful protests should be lumped in with the non-essentials?
I wish I could make an opinion on that. I have to go by what the legislation says, and that's what it says. Is it wasn't included as part of the allowable pieces. And again, we don't just take this and run. We ask a lot of questions. Like, I've been in touch with legal from many different, from the city and from the province regarding the legalities and what we are and what we aren't. What falls within this? Like, how far can we go with this? To the contrary, to try and have some leniency. And we've leaned on education. We have. I think we're up to about almost 500 calls that we've received since the start of since March of last year. And I think we have laid a total of 11 charges. That's it. And every one of those other ones we've, earlier on it was an education because people just were confused. They didn't know what was going on. But once we educated them in the logistics of the legislation, they went, "Oh, okay, thank you. I didn't see it that way." And that's what happened with your group, right?
Yeah, I was one of those people that got a ticket, and that's why I'm calling, because it's been 2 weekends in a row now where the right to protest outside is being trampled on, and for me, that's a massive, massive, massive red flag. And when I had a conversation with the men, and I said, can you guys not go up to your inspector or your chief and say, "Sir, we believe that this is unlawful," and your officer told me it doesn't work that way. And then after a more extensive conversation, he said, "Go call the inspector yourself." So my perspective was that these men, they can't even come to you and tell you that there's an unlawful order, because my perspective.
It's not unlawful.
But my.
So what are you talking about, an unlawful order?
I'm about to finish got some closure here. My perspective was that peaceful protest outside is the very final check and balance between a free country and a tyrannical country. That was my perspective. And because I'm the one protesting, I'm the one getting that right trampled on.
Yep.
So it's very personal for me.
I understand that.
And that's why I'm calling you Monday at 8 o'clock.
I got you. But I'm telling you that it's not an unlawful order. The officers are not following an unlawful order. They talk to me all the time. We talk about this ad nauseum all the time. We talk about what is acceptable, what isn't. At the end of the day, the legislation is the legislation. It's not unlawful. You don't have to agree with it, but it's not unlawful.
So would you be able to educate me on, if we were to be peacefully protesting and we got tickets but we absolutely refused to leave, what would be the next escalation past just getting a $880 ticket for peacefully protesting?
Potentially you could get another fine depending on if you've been asked to leave and you're not leaving. You could also be charged with obstruct because you're not following a lawful command according to what we're dealing with. But you obviously haven't heard what I said, that other people in the community do not support you and they're outraged. So as much as you think you have all this support and that you have the community's backing, you don't. You have a lot of people that are pissed off, mad, and angry that you're doing this.
Well,
because they understand the legislation.
I'm not after them, sir, because...
I know you're not. You don't care what they think, obviously.
Well, my rights don't end where their fear begins, sir.
No, it doesn't. You're absolutely right. But anyway, we're going to agree to disagree, and that's fine.
And I really appreciate that you took the time to have the conversation with me. That's the line. Thank you.
And you know what? That's what we can do. We can have this banter, and at the end of the day, we each respect each other. I've listened to you, and I've heard what you said, and I'm not disagreeing with what the things you are that you're saying. I'm not. But there's legislation right now that we have to act on, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. And it's not personal. It's not like we're looking at this group going, "Oh, for God's God's sakes, here they are again. We have to act within the guidelines of the legislation, and that's what that is. Okay? It's not personal.
Understood.
It truly isn't. Sorry?
Understood, Inspector.
Okay. Well, you have a great day.
You as well. Have a nice
Thank you.